The descent began with a strange sense of disbelief, as though his body was moving, but his mind had not yet accepted that the mountain was letting him go. Every step downward felt unfamiliar, almost wrong after days spent fighting upward and inward. His muscles knew the motion, but his thoughts lagged behind, trapped in the silence and danger he had learned to survive. The air felt heavier now, not because it was thinner, but because it carried the weight of everything he had endured. Leaving did not feel like escape. It felt like separation from something that had marked him deeply. He expected relief, maybe even joy, but what settled over him instead was confusion. The mountain had dominated his existence for 10 days, dictating when he moved, when he rested, and whether he lived. Now, as he stepped away from it, the absence of that constant threat felt unsettling. His senses remained sharpened, scanning for danger that no longer immediately existed. Each sound made him pause, each shadow demanded attention. Survival had rewired him, and the world below felt strangely unprepared for the version of him that was returning. As he descended, memories replayed with relentless clarity. The storm, the hunger, the nights where silence pressed so hard it felt louder than screams. These moments did not fade with distance. They followed him, echoing with every careful step. The climb had demanded courage, but the descent demanded reflection. There was time now, too much time, to think about how close he had come to disappearing into the ice. That realization tightened his chest more than the cold ever had. His body carried visible proof of survival, bruises, stiffness, exhaustion, but the deeper changes were invisible. He moved more slowly, not from weakness, but from awareness. Every step was measured, intentional. Recklessness no longer felt brave, it felt foolish. The mountain had stripped away his illusions about strength and replaced them with something quieter and more durable, respect for limits. As he descended, he realized he was not returning as the same man who had confidently stepped onto the frozen slope days earlier. The path down revealed familiar landmarks that once felt insignificant, but now carried emotional weight. A ridge he had crossed without fear now reminded him of how fragile life truly was. A narrow trail echoed with the memory of how easily one wrong step could have ended everything. These were not just locations, they were lessons carved into the landscape and into him. By the time the slope softened and the air warmed, he understood that survival was not a clean ending. It was a transformation. The mountain had not simply tested him, it had altered him. Walking away did not mean leaving the experience behind. It meant carrying it forward, step by step, into a world that would never fully understand what it took to descend alive. Survival did not feel like a gift the way he once imagined it would. As the mountain released its grip and the worst of the cold loosened, he became aware of what had been taken in exchange. There was no dramatic moment where he felt changed. Instead, it arrived quietly in the spaces between his thoughts. Something essential had shifted, something he could not name but could deeply feel. He was alive, yes, but the version of him that had entered the mountain no longer existed in the same way. Before the climb, he believed endurance was simply about pushing harder, about refusing to stop no matter the cost. The mountain corrected that belief brutally. Survival demanded compromise, humility, and acceptance of weakness. He learned that strength without awareness could kill him, and that pride had no place where nature held absolute control. That lesson stayed with him as a weight on his shoulders, invisible but constant. He could not unlearn it, nor did he want to. What the mountain took first was his sense of invincibility. The idea that effort alone could guarantee safety shattered somewhere between hunger and exhaustion. He had felt fear so raw it stripped away confidence and left only instinct behind. That fear did not disappear when he descended. It matured. It became caution, restraint, and an unshakable awareness that life could turn fragile in a single moment. The man who returned would never again move through the world carelessly. There was also a loss of simplicity. Before the climb, problems had seemed clear, solvable with time or effort. After 10 days in isolation, he understood that some challenges did not offer solutions, only endurance. That realization followed him down the mountain and into his future. He no longer expected the world to be fair or predictable. He accepted uncertainty as a permanent companion rather than an obstacle to be defeated. Emotionally, survival left him quieter. The urge to speak, to explain, to impress others with his experience faded quickly. Words felt insufficient, even unnecessary. How could he describe nights where the silence felt alive, or hunger so deep it erased thought? He stopped trying. The mountain had taught him that not everything meaningful needed to be shared, and that some experiences existed only to reshape the one who lived them. Yet despite what was taken, survival also carved something stronger in its place. The loss of innocence made room for clarity. He understood what truly mattered, not ambition or recognition, but presence, resilience, and the will to continue when comfort was gone. The cost of survival was high, but it was not empty. It left him changed, scared, and grounded in a truth few ever face. He had walked away alive, carrying less illusion and more understanding, and that exchange would shape the rest of his life. The silence of the mountain clung to him long after he had left its icy slopes. For 10 days, he had been surrounded by nothing but snow, wind, and his own thoughts, and that emptiness had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand. In the isolation, the constant quiet had become a companion, sometimes comforting, sometimes oppressive, but always insistent. Now, returning to the noise of the world, the chatter of people, the hum of machines, the endless distractions, felt jarring and almost alien. He realized that the mountain had taught him a lesson in listening, not just with his ears, but with his mind, and the world he once understood no longer fit into that clarity. For days, every decision had been distilled to survival: where to step, when to rest, how to ration warmth and food. The mind had become laser-focused, filtering out anything extraneous. That level of concentration, so vital in the frozen heights, left him unprepared for the chaos of ordinary life. Conversation seemed cluttered, full of words that lacked weight or consequence. Emotions, which had once felt immediate and pressing, now appeared muted, almost trivial compared to the raw, unfiltered struggle he had endured. He could laugh or cry, but each response carried a sense of distance, as though he were observing life rather than fully participating in it. The silence had also sharpened his awareness of himself. In the mountain's emptiness, he had confronted every fear, every weakness, and every stubborn impulse he carried. There had been no distractions, no comfort to hide behind, only the relentless demands of survival. That confrontation left him changed, self-aware in a way that few experiences could force. Even surrounded by people again, that self-knowledge lingered. He could no longer ignore his limits, nor could he easily pretend they did not exist. The mountain had stripped away illusions, and in their place a quiet certainty had taken root. He knew who he was when all else was removed, and that knowledge was inescapable. At times, the silence felt like a lens through which he viewed the world differently. Simple events, children laughing, a bird in flight, the wind against his skin, carried an intensity that others might overlook. The mountain had taught him to notice small details, to find significance in what seemed ordinary. Yet with that awareness came a profound sense of separation. Most people moved through life without confronting the raw edges he had faced, and he felt, in some way, apart from them. Not in superiority, but in isolation, as though he had glimpsed a layer of existence that few ever saw and could not fully share. The lessons of silence lingered, quietly shaping every choice, every thought, and every response. He returned to the world alive, changed and unrecognizable even to himself. The mountain's stillness had reshaped his mind, sharpening his perception, deepening his patience, and altering the rhythm with which he moved through life. Ordinary noise no longer defined him. He carried within him a different kind of sound, one measured by endurance, clarity, and a quiet understanding of the fragility and resilience of life. The mountain, which had threatened to break him at every step, revealed itself as a teacher more than an enemy. In the days of struggle, he had thought of it as a force to conquer, a harsh adversary that demanded submission or risked taking his life. Yet as he descended, he began to understand that the mountain's cruelty had been a form of instruction. Each gust of wind, each icy slope, each night spent shivering and hungry had taught lessons that could not be learned in comfort. It had forced him to confront limits he had never tested, to endure pain he had never imagined, and to make choices under pressure so intense that hesitation could have been fatal. The lessons were hard, immediate, and unforgettable. The mountain demanded total focus, showing him that strength without awareness was useless. It punished arrogance and rewarded patience. Every mistake was a teacher, and every success came only from listening, observing, and respecting the environment. Through this, he learned that survival was not a simple matter of courage or stubbornness. It required humility, the willingness to admit weakness, to adapt, to accept that he could not control everything around him. That humility, painful as it was, became a kind of armor, preparing him for life after the mountain. Beyond practical survival skills, the mountain reshaped his understanding of himself. It forced him to recognize his fears clearly, to see the fragility of his body and the limits of his endurance. In doing so, it also revealed his strengths, the quiet persistence that kept him moving, the clarity of thought that guided each handhold, and the stubborn refusal to surrender to despair. The mountain taught him that resilience is forged not in comfort, but in the crucible of adversity. Each night spent alone, each storm weathered, each step climbed when every part of him begged to stop had been a lesson in the endurance of the human spirit. The teaching of the mountain was subtle, almost paradoxical. It demanded everything, yet gave back more than he realized. By stripping away comfort, security, and certainty, it revealed what was essential focus, patience, presence, and the willingness to keep moving when the outcome was uncertain. It showed that life is not about controlling every circumstance, but about navigating them with awareness and integrity. Even its silence spoke volumes, teaching him to listen to the smallest signs, to notice the details others might overlook, and to trust in his own judgment when no one else could guide him. In leaving the mountain, he carried these lessons like invisible tools. They reshaped his perception of challenge, pain, and risk. The mountain had not simply been a barrier to overcome, it had been a guide, instructing him in ways nothing else could. Its harshness had created a clarity of mind and strength of spirit that would remain with him long after he returned to the world. He understood that true mastery was not about defeating the mountain, but about learning from it, letting it transform him, and carrying that transformation forward into every step of the life that awaited beyond the snow and ice.